Hi, my name is Angela Richison, and I'm excited to share a conversation with Pearl tonight.
Hey everybody, it's Pearl Chiarenza, and you are listening to another Conversations with Pearl. And today I'm excited to bring a really special guest. She's actually a friend of mine here in the Tampa Bay area. And I wanted to have her come on and share her journey, her story, and all the amazing things she does for our area. And so without further ado, I want to introduce you to my friend Angie Richison. She is a marketing professional, networking lover. She does love networking. Single
I do.
mother of a senior in high school, can't believe it, cheerleader from the grandstands at his football games, and 49-year-old grateful to be living every day. She is such an introvert as much as an extrovert, and she says she struggles at finding balance, but thrives in chaos too. Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
So excited to have you.
So hard to read and write about yourself.
Right? No, I know. When I remember when I first started writing books, and it's like you have to share your bio and share about yourself. It's like, oh, I don't. That's like you're right. It's like interesting to do that. So,
It is.
but because we don't always. That's part of what our show is about. We don't always think about ourselves first. We think about everything else, our titles that we wear, and all those things that come along with it. So, yeah, you're right. It's hard when we try to write about ourselves for sure. So Angie, tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Like I always love to go compare to back when you were a little girl and growing up and what you thought you wanted to do when you grew up to what are you doing today?
Well, when I was a little girl, actually, true story, in like fourth grade, I wrote a paper on what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I found it later in life. And my mom's best friend was a real estate agent. And I wrote a paper back then about wanting to be a realtor. And I thought she had an amazing job. She was always happy. She was helping people who were happy with their results. But I never really did anything about it. And when I went to college, I was following in the footsteps of my mom, who's a very successful businesswoman. And she's like, back then, 30 some years ago, she's like, you should get into this marketing thing. It's like the new buzzword, marketing. And so I did. And I went for marketing in college, and then randomly happened to take too many economics classes because I loved it, and ended up with an economics minor. And then really thought I was going to end up in the retail world. I had always worked retail from the time I was 16 all the way through college, working at the mall, and thought I was going to be a buyer. My first internship in college, I was a big believer in internships. And I did an internship for Lane Bryant at their flagship store and worked with their buyers from New York. I thought it was awesome, so cool. And I was in my sorority house, and somebody said, I'm doing this really cool job in motorsports. You might like that. And my dad used to build old hot rods. And I was like, what do you mean in motorsports? I used to have to go to all those, hot rod shows and all that. And she said, yeah, I sell monster truck tickets and supercross tickets. And I said, well, that sounds pretty cool. And so I gave her my resume that night. And the next morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, we all know college students are not up at 8. I got a phone call. And a gentleman gave me a call and said, we want to interview you. Can you be here in an hour? So I hustled over and I got there. And he said, well, what makes you think you can sell monster truck tickets? And I said, well, if I can sell lingerie to plus size women, I could probably sell monster truck tickets. And that's a true story. That's exactly how I responded. And because it had just kind of started coming out, and you're talking 35 years ago. And I said, I'm finding a way to market it and make it something that we're doing really well in selling. And that was what they had me specializing in at the store. So he said, well, let's give it a try. And I was in that career for 30 years until COVID, at the same company that got bought out 6 times. So, and then COVID came and knocked out live entertainment. But I will tell you, I used my economics background as much as I did marketing, because, ticketing is, as we all know, supply and demand. And so then when COVID came and I had to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I kind of went back to that paper that I wrote and said, maybe it's time to finally get my real estate license. And so I went and took the test, and I did. And 1 in 7 people in Hillsborough County here in the Tampa area have their real estate license. And I love doing business, and I love doing business with other business people. And so I decided to not go that route and go into the mortgage side and use my marketing background. And so I was marketing a mortgage company for 2 years. and working with real estate agents, and then stepped back and said, this really isn't my overarching passion. Because what I really loved about what I did in the motorsports world was the payoff of seeing the kids come to the show and be so excited to meet the driver, see the trucks. And I was missing that part of a transaction. And I finally said, you know, behind the scenes is great. And I know I'm helping people, but I really want that fulfillment at the end and getting to the closing table with them. So I made the decision to transition myself into the real estate and doing it more part time, full time, because I also stepped back into motorsports as well. So I'm doing both right now, and I'm
Wow,
loving it.
that's and I know I remember when I first met you, you were doing the motorsport stuff, and then the mortgage, right after COVID, then you did the
Hmm.
mortgage stuff. And one of the things I loved about you was your spirit. Like you definitely you care for the person you listen to. You definitely, how can I connect to? And those are things that I love to do. Like who can I connect with? Who is that connection? But I also liked what watching you on social media and in person, watching how you also connect it with the realtors like for their open houses. And as somebody who used to do mortgages, that was something that I remember I missed too, was like going to the open houses and supporting the agents and kind of being part of that scene of the people walking through the houses. But I never wanted to wear the other hat. I never wanted to be on the other side. I love the number side of it all. But I
Hmm.
can see like the passion and that like you said, like that here they the keys of this beautiful home that they've some of the clients work so hard to get there. They, sweat and tears to get to that side and to do something that you love and passion. And I'm thinking like when you said too, I'm going back, I wrote my notes here about the college girl getting a call at 8 o'clock in the morning. Can you come for an hour?
Sure. I'll make it work, right? What I loved the most about when I decided to do marketing in the mortgage side is ultimately, and I say this to this day all the time, like I just love doing business, but I love doing business in the aspect of like figuring it out and moving it forward and how maybe we can do it different. Not necessarily always better, but different, right? How do we make our stamp on it? And so that we make a name for ourselves in a world where a lot of people are doing the same thing. And where I found success in that was being able to partner with agents that, social media was kind of new to some of them. They had stepped out
Mhm.
of another kind of business and come into real estate. They weren't used to doing social media. And so I found my niche connecting with people in helping them do social media in a different way. To the point that some of them would take a picture and test me and say, all right, I'm going to send you something. Just write me a caption and I'll post it. And I said, send me a picture of anything and we'll make it work. We can always get it back to it. Right. So somebody sent me a picture of the water tower in Apollo Beach and said, what does this have to do with real estate? Here's my test. And I said, you love where you live. You love being in a small community in a small town, and we love where we live. And this is part of our slice of paradise, right? And she's like, how do you always do this? And but it's really truly just being genuine. At the end of the day, it's letting who you are shine through in what you do and finding a passion for it. And if you don't have a passion for it, then I say all the time, then don't do it.
Yeah, I
I trained
totally,
a lot
yeah.
of people in the entertainment world, and I used to tell them all the time, when you go to an event and you don't get your hair doesn't stand up on edge and you get goosebumps at the national anthem, go do something else. You're in the
Yeah.
wrong business. Because ultimately the payoff is seeing people, get excited and be there and have fun with as a family. There's so few things we get to do anymore that really impacts the whole family. And both of my jobs now do that. And I either impact them finding a home for their family, or I impact them getting a 2-hour experience with no phones, no distractions, and to go actually, be a family together. And for me, that's really rewarding still to
I,
this day.
That's one of the things I've always loved about you too. Is you watching your social media and getting to know you over the past couple of years. I see that, and that's so can be rare these days because people are so busy. And one of the things I had hoped was that after COVID, that time that we had ourselves, that we wouldn't go back to that pre-COVID craziness, busyness. But I do see it's creeping back in, and I'm that's one of the things like I love to coach women on is like taking time to like what are you doing for yourself? What are you doing to put yourself first? And then what are you doing to incorporate those that you love? Because we get so busy, especially as moms, we wear these titles, we wear all these things that we do, our job and everything, but we forget that we have to take care of ourselves and put ourselves first. And, we've come through COVID and that was a big change for all of us. And you just explained, career wise, what it did for you. But you
Mhm.
recently also had a huge health scare that came across last year with you. Do you want to share some of that with us, with the listeners?
Yeah, sure. So, I will be the first to admit, I have never figured out balance. To this day, I still don't. It's probably my biggest struggle in life is figuring out how to be the professional that I want to be, how to be the mom I want to be, how to be the friend I want to be, how to be the family member I want to be. And never found the perfect balance of being all at the same time. And it's hard. It's really hard because whether you're a mom or dad, whether you have kids or not, but if you're a professional and you're trying to get out there and really succeed, it's tough. And recently, it was kind of twofold. I was traveling for work and I was in Kentucky and it was event day. And if you know anything about, event day, like nothing gets in the way of event day. And I woke up with a stomach ache out of the blue. And, I got through the day and I was like, man, it's getting worse. And literally 5 minutes before the doors were about to open to the public, I collapsed and couldn't do it anymore. And I went to the EMTs at the arena and they said, I think you need to go to the emergency room. And I was like, no, I got an event to run. There's no time for that. And they're like, well, you got to go. And so I did. And because sometimes we just have to realize like our body, you got to stop and listen to your body. And my mom had said it to me many times when I was stressed to the max. And she said, you got to listen to your body. And I didn't, but my appendix was rupturing and it didn't fully rupture, but it was leaking. So I had infection coming out. And so I went to the hospital, got it taken out. Should have been an outpatient, but I was in Kentucky and not in Florida. So my boyfriend flew up, got me, drove me home. I was there 3 days. They were watching my infection level, and it was going the right direction. So they sent me home. It took 2 days to get me home. I don't remember a lot of the car ride because I was, on so many painkillers and everything else. But got home and sat down on a chair the next day and collapsed in my kitchen. And I ended up in the hospital here in Tampa and found out that the infection wasn't all found. And I had two major abscess in my abdomen, one that they could get to and drain, and the other one that they could not get to. It was deep woven into my small bowel under my uterus and everything, and there was no clear path to get to it. But more importantly, the infection had hit my blood, and I was fully septic. And I had heard that word before, but I didn't really know what it meant. I didn't know how much it really meant, really, to me, until I was in the infectious disease department for 3 weeks, up in the hospital, and having to tell your 17-year-old son like you can't go more than 15 minutes away from this hospital. If you get the call, you got to get up here. Um, my mom flew in, my sister flew in, and it was really truly a time that I stepped back and kind of went, tomorrow's never promised, and more than ever. And luckily, obviously, I'm okay. They figured it out. It took them some time to figure out the infection and get me on the right antibiotics. And then I came home for 21 days of home health care. And I had never in my life other than having a baby, taken myself out of working, literally, truly not answering an email, nothing for almost 6 weeks. And just finally had to say, all right, I'm listening, body. I'm here to heal and I'm going to concentrate on nothing else but that. But I really stepped back and thought when I was in the hospital, and I lost my dad when I was 20 years old and he was 49 and I'm 49. And I really stepped back and said, he never saw 50 and I'm going to do everything I can to see 50. And so I really took it to heart that I had to listen for once and try to find a balance, try to really listen to my body and give myself the time to rest and heal the way I needed to. So it was definitely a journey, but I can say that I'm blessed and made it through it and I'm back working.
And you're right. I'm going to go back a little bit and then we'll come back forward. And what you're sharing is you're talking about balance. I always tell my clients, Angie, that there's no balance. It's harmony. You have to figure out how to find harmony, because even if you think it's imbalance, something's going to happen. And if you allow that something to happen to take you down, then you can't figure out how to get back up. You're never going to be ever be a balance. I call it harmony, because if we can be in harmony, then when things come and, get in our way from that where our path is going, at least we've got we understand it's just a temporary thing, that hopefully it's not anything that's permanent, right? And like you also talked about, we're not promised tomorrow, and I know, for me, that resonates so much for me with the loss of our son, that,
Mhm.
we're talking to him on a telephone, and within 5 minutes he's gone, so grasping what we can, and like your mom said, listening to our body. So for the listeners that are listening, anytime you feel like it's not, something doesn't feel right, and like Angie said, she had a show to put on. She was trying to put her show on, and her body said, "We ain't putting a show on right now, girlfriend. We're leaving the show." Sometimes you have to do those things so that you can show up for the next show, that you can show up for what your path is supposed to be, and it's hard. And I can't imagine having a 17-year-old son and having that conversation. That you, like you said, you need to be standing nearby, and then also, when you were saying your dad, I thought, wow, I didn't know that part of your story, that,
Mhm.
your dad, you don't want to be that path with your dad. It's interesting you share that, because my husband, his father, my father-in-law, I loved him to death. He was like my own dad. He died in his late 60s, early, like he didn't even make 70, and he's Chuck's at that age now. Now his dad's his step down, but he raised him since he was little.
Sure.
But I truly believe you emulate.
Family's
Like
family.
I see habits and everything that he has. I'm like, are you
Mhm.
sure you're not biologically related? Because
Right?
that's your dad, right? But we have those habits that we create, and it can emulate, and we can just listen to our bodies and take the time out and create harmony. One of the big things that I love to do is in the morning take time to sit in my front porch swing on my, and I tell people in the neighborhood. In fact, we were just talking about this in our neighborhood chat over here in Winthrop. Someone's like, "Oh, school's starting, and in our neighborhood, they're trying to cut through to get to do two different schools." And I'm like, "Just come sit on my front porch swing for a little bit. Let them all go by you." It's like,
Yeah.
just take that
You
time
know,
out.
I went through, I mean, I said goodbye to my dad in college at wintertime, not knowing that, 2 days later he would be gone too. And it was tragic and sudden. And, having to go through that is such a process. Um, and it affects everything, every day of your life moving forward. You think of everything differently. And, for a while, I went on a health journey to lose weight a couple years ago. And, I really said, one life, live it. And I've always lived by that. And I really resonated with that quote. And that's kind of what I live my life by, because tomorrow isn't promised. And, but where the struggle for me and the road kind of meets the rubber is, you know, I'm not a perfectionist by any means, but I also sometimes feel like if I don't do it, it won't get done the best at times. And so handing off for me is hard. Delegating sometimes is hard. Trusting that other people are going to get it done to the way that I want it to get done. And I had a really great boss. And he said to me, he goes, listen, we'll get more done if you just give people direction and let them go do more and you concentrate on the next level stuff. And if you have to fix a little bit of it, fix it. But you got to empower them or they're never going to learn either. And you can't lead if you can't give people the opportunity to step up and follow. And that really resonated with me. And I said, you're right. I have to, train them and trust them. And when I went down a path of that, it really freed me of so much that it had to be me and it had to represent me. And I realized that I can get more done by empowering other people around me and empowering them to trust in themselves that it's okay if it's not perfect when that because I think some of them felt like it has to be her way. And and that was another balance for me is to realize it doesn't have to be my way. There's a lot more ways in the world than Angie's way. And that was probably the freeingest thing in my life is to realize like life ain't perfect and it's never gonna be. And letting go of the idea of that it's always going to be perfect really freed me to realize I can have more people on my team and the more people on the team, the more stuff we get done. So, um, honestly, that was probably the biggest turning point for me in life, in career and personally. I hire things out at my house that I didn't used to, because I just don't have time. And I'd rather take that time with my son or doing things that bring me peace and balance than worrying about, having to do the next thing around the house sometimes. So, I think for anybody to try and find balance in that trade-off is so hard. And when you can come to terms with it, and part of it too, I think, is just the idea of keeping up with the Joneses. Like, I, maybe it's my age now, and I just realize that I don't have to. I can live my life my way, and it's okay, and I can do it unapologetically and not have to justify myself all the time, right? I mean, yes, we got to follow rules of of the road, and we got to do all those things, but like, it's okay if my laundry's not put away right this second because my son got some, a hot meal on the table. I mean, our to-do lists are never going to stop, so it's coming to terms with prioritizing sometimes. And I'm not perfect at it. I still struggle with it every day. I write things down, and sometimes one day it's a priority and the next day it's not. Realization that those priorities can change, I think, is probably when I think, grow up and say, all right, like, it's okay, and it's
Yeah.
okay to feel it's okay.
Yeah, and you know what you said, it's something that I love when I coach the women. It's all those things you talk about. Like, we think we have to get it all done. We can't hand it off, and I love that what that boss said. He was hand it off. He's got to fix a few things. It's like, empower them to fail forward, as I like to call it too.
Hmm.
They're going to make mistakes, but help them be, fix them, help them learn. And I think that happens to us too in motherhood. We're so busy, we're afraid to not be there for something for our kids. We're afraid to fail them, or let them fall, and they're going to get back up. But we don't have to do everything. And I love that you talk about, you have your list, but sometimes it gets done and sometimes it doesn't get done. And I'm like you. I don't know if it's aging. So if you're listening to us, maybe you'll catch up you'll tell us when you catch up to our age, because I'm going to be 60 in a few months. But it's like, I don't know if it's that, but you're right. At some point we just hit this thing and go, why am I trying to keep up with the Joneses? I'm just going to do me. I need to just take
Hmm.
care of me, because keeping up with the Joneses is like wearing me out, because this person, that person. I remember when we first started having our kids, and I remember we adopted Matthew, and I think Nate was a baby. I lived on a street. I was the only working mom. And so I would come home like after work or whatever. And, I did mortgages. So it was crazy busy,
Hmm.
and I'd come home and that'd be Bunko or whatever. And I was like, oh, I didn't hear about it. They go, oh, well, you're always working. Oh, you're always working. I was like,
Oh, I
yeah.
still hear it to
I,
this
I-
day.
I'm like, I'm like, at least tell me about it. Cause I may decided to go, and I can make the time for myself. But looking back, I mean, it really didn't hit me till, Matt, my oldest, was a senior in high school. And I realized I have not done anything for me, and I need to figure out what I like to do. And so that's when I really went on this journey to figure it out, to do things, put myself first. And as I did that, I realized I wasn't alone. Just like we're saying, there's many women that we figure this out later in life. We're like, oh my gosh, what, and what was I doing? And then also, we have to teach our kids that they don't have to do everything. They don't have to be everything to everybody. Just be you to yourself first, and then the
Yeah,
rest
and
comes.
I think it's important that we realize that at the end of the day, like, I wish I knew I wish I realized these when I was in my 20s. Life would have been so much easier.
Yeah.
But, every stage of life is a new stage. And, someone said this to me when my son was having his temper tantrums when he was like 2.5. And I was like, oh my God, am I ever going to get through this? And she goes, it's a stage. Just remember, this too shall pass.
Yeah.
This too shall pass.
Yeah.
And that resonated with me huge. And to this day, I say that all the time. I'm like, this too shall pass. It is only a stage.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's good stages, and we really got to soak up those stages, because this too shall pass. And there's times that I go, whew, today, this too shall pass. And but all of those stages, I think, were meant to go through at a different time. And, I wish I had some of the wisdom I have now. I feel really old saying that, but it's true. Like, I think of how much my stress level would have been better. I think of, how much I would have stopped and enjoyed life and been present more in life had I realized it then. I think everybody gets caught in their 20s of climbing the corporate ladder and doing all those things. And there's no doubt I lost track of my health. I mean, I don't want to say a number, but I mean, it was significant. To the point a doctor looked at me and said, "You have two choices. You can either go get surgery, or you probably not going to watch your son graduate high school. Yeah, you're not going to be here." My weight had gotten so bad, and so I personally made a decision that I was going to do something about it, and I did. Now I did great. And then life got busy again. And, like everybody, it's this roller coaster, right? None of us are perfect. I'll tell you right now, I'm 50 pounds heavier than I want to be. And I'm trying to find balance in life to get back at it. None of us are, but as much as I want to beat myself up about it, I also realize I'm better than I was. And I'm not all the way back there. And sometimes you got to give yourself some grace that, I've went through a lot in the last year and a half, 2 years, and it's okay. This too shall pass, and we'll get back on the bandwagon.
I love that this too shall pass is a great reminder. And you're right, life is such a roller coaster. And I remember right after Matt passed, I mean, it was just like so crazy, and I was like, one of the things that we said, because we were a unit of four, and one of the things that the three of us, our younger son Nate and my husband Chuck and I said, and when everybody was arriving to be here for the services, we're like, don't hide your tears, don't not show it, because we need to feel it. And we know there's joy in it. We know there's sadness, but we need to feel it. And like, I think I said something along, we're going to get through this. It's going to be a different, but we're going to get through this because that's what we're meant to do. And that's truly what, it's been. People say, you're so strong. I'm glad you think I'm strong. I know I'm strong, but I know I'm weak. And sometimes I just have to let the weakness take over and just give myself grace, like you said. And it's so important. One of the things, that, like I said, is all about having the opportunity to take that time for ourselves and make sure. And so I'm glad we had this conversation. I know that, one of the things I want to remind everybody too is, we're not promised tomorrow. That's what Angie and I have been talking about today. And I always like to ask this question. So if you're listening to us, think about this question. And that is, if for some reason that God decides he's taking you home tomorrow and all your family and friends could say at your eulogy is what they saw you do for yourself, what would they say? It's not the volunteer, it's not the titles you wore, but what did they see you do?
Mm.
And everybody can't say something different, then I want to talk to you. I want to just give you some grace to teach yourself some harmony and some tips to help you put yourself first, because it can be hard at times to do that. And there are ways to do it. And it's all about communicating your realistic expectations to those around you, whether it's your job, whether it's your family, whoever that is, and also to yourself, So I'm glad
I
we
think
had.
that is so important. And I was going to say that earlier, like you got to communicate to the people around you. When my son was in travel baseball, we had no time. And every invite I got was a no because we were at baseball. And my friends stopped inviting me, and I finally, talked to them all and said, listen, it's not that I don't want to come. It's that I'm putting my son in this stage of life first, but please keep inviting me because a day will come that I can come.
Right.
And I don't want you to think that I don't want to be there. Right. And it's communicating to people maybe why you're right now in this phase of life, not able to participate because there's other things happening. And I'm getting to that stage now where, he's in football. It's not as demanding as baseball. He has his own car. I got some mom time back. And as a matter of fact, when we leave this podcast tonight, I'm going to go have Wind Down Wednesday with my girlfriends.
Yay.
Because I can, right?
Right.
And sometimes you got to prioritize yourself. But
Yeah.
I think if you think about what you want to leave people with is I always say to myself, I want them to think back and think of how I made them feel of
Right.
being in my presence, did they feel like they walked away being a better person because of either information I brought to them, the feeling I brought to them, the empowerment that I made them feel in themselves to go do something. I think there's nothing more impactful than the feeling you leave somebody.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you 100%. You know, and that's really at the end of the day what that is all about. What life is about is how are you making the other person feel, and then you know, of course, how are you taking care of yourself? And I'm so glad we had this conversation. I know we don't get to see each other often, but from the minute I met you a couple years ago, you've just been somebody I love to follow. Somebody I think has got just this world of
Thank you.
caring and life about her. And I watched you go through the journey, and I wanted the listeners to hear from you that, you know, like you said, life can be hard and we're going to have stuff that happens, but we can get through it. And with the support system like you had and I have, it's definitely doable. And so would you tell everybody how they can reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Facebook. I'm Angie Richison. On Instagram, it's Angie Richison, and would love to have you follow me. Love to answer questions. And I think one of my favorite things in the world, because I am a networker at heart, is just empowering other people. I would say women, but I think it's important for everybody. And, you know, we do succeed more with other people around us. And someone said to me one day, "You're the real life Angie's List. Like, I always go to you as my go to because you know somebody that knows somebody." And I said, you know, that to me means I've done my job out networking and meeting people and leaving an impression that people remember me and I remember them. So, but yeah, I would love for people to reach out. And if you're going through something and you just need somebody to talk to, please reach out. I mean, nobody's life is perfect. And, you know, if we all peel away the onion and be honest with ourselves and share our stories, I think it helps everybody understand that none of us are perfect and we're just trying to get through this but not just get through it, but enjoy it. You know, I mean, we get one chance at this life and we should enjoy every second of it that we get. And I can tell you, I'm going to celebrate big in May when I turn 50 because my dad didn't get that chance. And that's what's important to me right now.
I'm excited to see that happen as well. And we're going to put all Angie's contacts in the chat and the show notes and everything for you as well. And so Angie's already knows that we're going to do our shuffling of our cards. So tell me
Oof.
when to stop and you get to answer the card.
Mm, stop.
All right. So your card says, "How do I care for others?" I think you kind of shared, but how do you care for others?
I think most importantly, how I care for others is I try to listen, but more importantly, to empower them. I think the more that I can help somebody through a situation, understand a situation. So whether that's in real estate, understanding the numbers, understanding what they can do. I love nothing more than someone saying to me, "I can't afford anything. I'm going to be renting forever. But I have a goal of wanting to own a home and finding, and it might be 2 or 3 years from now, but helping them establish that, you know, path." Or somebody coming to me and saying, "I'm not sure what to do," and helping them get through it. You know, as much as I'm a real live walking Angie's List sometimes that my girlfriend coined me as, I've been coined as the solutions person a lot of times. And, you know, I think helping people find a way so that they can go empower themselves to do something is really the biggest help you can give somebody.
I love that. I love that. So we're gonna leave everybody with that. And I just want to remind everybody as we close out the show, always that you come into the world as this amazing rough oyster on the outside. But if you work hard on everything and do some of the things we've talked about today, you will find your inner pearl of greatness. And I hope each and every one of you go out today and work on your inner pearl of greatness. Have a great day.
Thanks, Pearl.